We are, I can say, in a much better situation than we were 2 years ago, but we are rather still anxious because we're not really, there yet. A lot of things are still, uncertain. So we're okay-ish, but we're not quite there. We moved from using the Zimbabwe dollar to the United States currency. It's not easy, for a lot of people to lay their hands on the United States dollar, which is now the legal, currency. A lot of people are having to struggle to make ends meet. A lot of people are not, being able to send their kids to school, because cost of living is just high and there isn't, the money is not there. Subsistence agriculture, if I may say, is what, makes people, especially those in the rural areas, survive. So I think what Here Africa is doing is, probably a fantastic job because, correctly, a lot of people fail to, get enough food because they would not have had, seed to plant in the first place, or even fertilizers to help, get a better yield. So you'd find then that if somebody gets something, to put, in the ground, at least, they're assured of, making sure that they take care of their families. But those in the cities, it's a very difficult and different story altogether because they've got to pay, rentals, they've got to pay utility bills and whatnot. It's really hard, so people are actually surviving, or it's a hand-to-mouth situation. We've got primary level education, which is basically children who are around the age of 6 up to 12 or 13. And then we have high school, which is now 13, usually 13 to maybe 16. And then those who want to further their education then go for advanced level, which is for people who are around 17, 18, in preparation to go to university. So basically that's the education system that we have. But you'd find that a lot of people are actually struggling to raise money for most of their, for kids to, attain ordinary level. I know the situation is really dire in Bulawayo, where, I remember last year the media reporting that, no schools had actually received kids who had registered for, to write the ordinary level examinations. And, that's a disaster, considering that you're talking of a, whole region in a country. People, parents basically saying, we cannot afford, to raise the money for school fees and examination fees. Because you're talking of, people who are victims not only of, terrible droughts, but people who don't have enough, in terms of enough resources in terms of actually, preparing for an agricultural season. You're talking of kids that are going to school hungry, probably having to walk long distances. And then when they get there, sometimes the teachers are not there. Also, there are no textbooks in schools. And if the teacher is there, probably they're not really, motivated enough. You're talking of people who, earning, I think now it's probably around $120 a month. And it's just, hard in general. But the biggest challenge is the, shortage of, textbooks for these teachers and the kids to learn. So you are kind of expecting children to, learn and get good grades and good results, and thereby, go on to have good lives. But, the foundation and the resources are not, adequate or are not even available. So I know the Ministry of Education was trying hard to source money from UNICEF to make sure that each school at least will get sufficient textbooks. But when I left, they were in the process of printing those textbooks, but whether there will be enough, I don't know. But the biggest challenge is that we continue to lose teachers to neighboring countries. So that's another challenge, that the textbooks may be available, but the teachers are actually saying you can't, be investing in printing textbooks because we, the teachers, don't have enough, money as our salaries. So we need more money in terms of, incentives. So it's a catch-22 situation. What should the government prioritize? It becomes very hard. Standards are going down. In the early 80s, Zimbabwe had, or rather the government embarked on a very brilliant scheme where, they were trying to, education was free, and they were building so many schools. But, if you build, you need to maintain, structures to make sure that hasn't, happened. And because a lot of, parents are really poor and, so as a result, you'd find that, the state of most, schools in terms of buildings is, in shambles. Resources are not available, where you are probably looking at an ordinary, normal classroom having, maybe a chalkboard and some chalk and some books. Those things, are not available. Because of the dire shortage of, resources in the schools, you would find then that, teachers, I suppose, let me say teachers have to be very innovative under the circumstances. And so the best that they can do is to, get the kids to, clear a small piece, of ground, where they can actually use their fingers to just, learn to shape letters and write. So the teacher can actually come and, see what it is that they're writing and, help them in the process. So it's part of, survival strategies, but that's not probably how things should be. You're talking of we're living in an era where some schools in some parts of the world are actually having to use computers, and you still have situations where some kids are having to write on the ground. The biggest challenge has been HIV and AIDS, and probably following hard on the heels of HIV AIDS is what I may call the new development in Zimbabwe, where a lot of parents, or rather families, are being affected because either the father or the mother has to go to the UK or to Australia or to a neighboring country, because people believe there are chances of earning or getting a better living and send money back home. But what we've been discovering is that a lot of people who leave Zimbabwe, either they go start new families there or don't send money back. It just becomes hard. But then those that are left home, are also probably finding themselves in situations where they have to, do other things to continue, surviving. But the main reason really is, the high deaths due to, HIV and AIDS. But then you'd find that the situation could also be easily, made better. But, we have a terrible combination where you have poverty, hunger, and HIV. you know, you're talking of people who would need, you know, access to medicine, but they don't have access to, or rather the health system, you know, in Zimbabwe has also, you know, not been spared because of the, you know, economic challenges that, you know, we're facing. So it's really, you know, it's a spaghetti of, you know, things that are intertwined and tangled. You can't really, you know, say this is, you know, the problem on its own. You know, you look at HIV/AIDS, you find that, you know, there are so many other factors that are fueling, you know, this particular problem. Statistics show that, you know, HIV/AIDS incidents are actually coming down, which is good, but you know, there are still a lot of other things that, you know, we have to, you know, address. One thing that I really like about Here Africa is the vision that they have, you know, of sustainability. Because quite often you may have a situation where people, you know, are not equipped to be independent and will continue saying, oh, well, you know, there is an organization called Here Africa, they'll come and do this for us. But I think, you know, the most important thing is that they are trying to, you know, help people at least get off the ground. You know, like I heard that, you know, one of the things is, you know, if they give a family, you know, maize seed to plant, then for sure, you know, if the season is good, you know, people should then, you know, not expect to be helped again, you know, the same way. But, you know, so this then enables Here Africa to sort of move on to other areas, because if you look at it at the moment, you know, I think from what I was noticing, Here Africa is probably in, you know, 4 areas in Zimbabwe. But, you know, you're talking of a very big country which, you know, requires assistance. And I'm not saying, you know, they should, you know, be able to solve all these problems at once, but, you know, just that idea of, you know, telling people that we want to help you to be on your feet, so that we can move on and, you know, go on to help others is probably a very good approach, and I think it's a job well done. I have faith in God. You know, if you read Daniel 2, verse 20, you know, Daniel has a very good message that God changes the times and the seasons. So I am, you know, hopeful that, you know, joy comes in the morning. We will, you know, it's a phase. We have, you know, learned hard lessons from this, you know, era, and I hope that it will come to pass and we'll, you know, open a new chapter. We can't, you know, continue in this state, you know, forever. We'll move on. I'm sure, you know, God will make a way. He made a way, you know, He parted the Red Sea. He will make a way.